Good evening, everybody. On this Wednesday evening. You probably weren't expecting me. We thought maybe we would surprise you. With one of the reasons being all of this discussion on the DNA and the defense moves. It's great seeing you. This evening we'll give it a couple of minutes. Hello, Norma. Teresa are the best mods on YouTube. Teresa M, Maui Girl, Mimi J2, Miss Sophia, and Laura. We're so grateful to each and every one of you. And of course, all of our subscribers, our Patreon members, our members from YouTube on this channel. We can't do this without you. We're so grateful. Hello, Denise, Misty, Raylan, Adriana, Jenny, Cat H, Frenchie's mama. Love that. Becky, Sharon, One Love 5100 or 51,000. Sherry, Erica, Kay, Jacqueline, Kami. Welcome to our TIR family. Dog Mom from Seattle. It's great seeing you here this evening. T3 Custom Creations, Moonlight Me. I love these names. You guys are awesome. Man, have we got a great crowd here tonight. Bob, they're in Idaho. Hopefully you get called on the jury, buddy. Bob Gilliam, you guys know Bob. He's been on the show here before. Eminem from Utah, so great to see you. And then, of course, Lisa. Well, thank you so much for being here, everybody. I know this is a last minute, again, approach, but to the situation going on in Idaho with the latest hearings from Bryan Kohberger and his defense team and Taylor. You know, tonight I always start off remembering why we're here, and in memory of Ethan, Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana. We only ask one thing on this program, and that's you hit the subscribe button and send this on to all your social media networks. We're so grateful for that. But more importantly, when we discuss things here this evening, we want to make sure that we are classy, above the line, and discussing it with these four young lives first and foremost in our minds. So last night was a great evening. It was so neat having my Karen here. And she said, you know, we didn't get into, you know, some of the other stuff that's going on with Bryan Kohberger. And she called me while I was at work today and said, hey, do you want to talk about Bryan tonight? Because I think there's a lot of confusion going on about the blood. If you have not heard, then Ann Taylor brought up in one of the latest hearings that there is unknown blood, unidentifiable blood from a hand railing and a glove found outside of the residence. Now, of course, that raises a lot of questions from the defense side, but it could be a absolute nothing burger, because there's two positions being taken here. The prosecution said nothing, and in terms of, was there enough to even identify, to make an identity from the blood itself? And if there is, then of course, if they know it's a male, that's not favorable to Bryan Kohberger. If it's an unknown male, it doesn't mean it couldn't have been his. So the question, came up for Karen was, they mentioned the blood, the glove. And remember, guys, when we were out there, Karen and I, and as I was walking on that road out in front of the house, and you can see the curb there, behind the trash cans, I saw a glove sticking out. And the homicide detective in me said, hey, that doesn't look right. DLR doesn't look right. And so I looked a little bit closer, and sure enough, it was a black glove, sticking out of the snow. And, the more I looked at it, I thought, okay, where'd that come from? Now, I don't know if this is the glove that they're referring to in Ann Taylor's argument to the court. But I definitely knew, in my heart of hearts, that this situation was, just not looking right? I mean, there it is. You can see it right here. And it's sticking out, and there's some leaves over it. There's snow over it. So I didn't know, like probably the next person, if it had been there for quite some time, if it had been planted there, or what the story was, right? Could it have been, another investigator dropped it, by accident? I mean, there was all kinds of theories and thoughts going on. In fact, people were even blaming me, for putting the glove down there, as if I got, enough time in my life to go to jail for planting evidence in a high-profile murder, right? So there was all kinds of, crazy ideas coming around. And, I mean, how crazy is that, right? Like Karen and I we drove up there because we were working on another case. It's out now. The information's out now, but I was working on Michael Vaughn at the time. And this thing, there's like 11 or 12 days later, we drove up there and spent the whole day up there looking at this crime scene. And then I came back and, resumed what I was doing. But I just happened to look over, and there's that doggone glove sitting there. And I thought, holy cow, I think these guys missed this. So there was a police car sitting out front. Remember, you guys probably remember, the cars, how it was sitting here, the patrol car. And I called the officer over, and he walked over, and I said, hey, I'm homicide guy, and that doesn't look right out in front of this house. And his words were, oh, wow. And he said, okay, I'll get our evidence folks over here, and we'll pick it up and collect it. I said, good idea. That's a great idea. And so that's kind of where we left it. And we kind of stepped away. Karen and I went around back behind the house. I started to take a look at the surrounding area and started to theorize with inside of my own head about, possibilities, etc. So now the defense is claiming that there's DNA blood, and this is from the defense's claim, from an unknown male who was found inside the home on a hand railing. They didn't really identify what hand railing. How convenient, because the house is gone. It would have been really nice to go back to that hand railing and establish where they're talking about. Anyway, so she goes, there's another unknown male blood found inside the house, and another male's blood sample was found on a glove that police located just outside the home. And she said this in court a few weeks ago. So Karen and I both looked at each other and went, you think that's the same glove? And we don't know. That's the bottom line. We just don't know. But now what I want to talk about tonight is this question on, let's talk about, this other, or these two other blood areas. And what does it mean when there's an unknown male blood found in the house? Well, it means a couple of things. One, it could be a total another person, or it could be the same person, and there's just not enough to test it for further DNA, or it's been, compromised. And so they didn't get enough off of it. But the fact that there's blood, we have to ask ourselves, okay, if it's male, how many males are involved in this incident? Well, we know that, of course, Ethan, he was bleeding. And we don't know, at least I don't, if Bryan Kohberger was bleeding. So those are the two males in the scenario. And it doesn't necessarily mean that if we take in, a third person, then I think the prosecution could argue, well, maybe there's a third person or a second person. But probably not. Because the problem that when we start arguing about, DNA, and this is why I think she is working so hard, and Taylor's doing her job, working so hard to get the IGG thrown out, because if she gets that thrown out, then she also potentially could get a shot at this, the K-bar. Now, if that happens, well, then they also have to get a shot at, removing, let me go over here for a second, this number here, this Amazon stock number, which lines up with this knife. And they got this knife from that Amazon stock number that was somewhere in the circle when Amazon presented their information back from the search warrant. They also presented that number. This is a stock item number. It's a specialized number that Amazon uses, and it just so happens to correlate to a K-bar knife with the same type of sheath. And so here's the bar that has to be jumped over. Okay. One, the prosecution can say, well, there's not enough in those two blood stains to positively identify that it's Bryan Kohberger or Ethan. There's not enough, Your Honor. Okay. However, we will stipulate that it is male blood from a male. Okay. And if we think about, in Suzanne Morphew's case, the defense raised the issue of in her Range Rover, remember the unidentified registered sex offenders, how did that information or how did that touch DNA get inside of her car? So this is going to be the same argument. It doesn't mean that they don't have the right person. It just muddies the water in terms of an argument for the defense, which is their job. That's what they want to do. Okay. And that's what they should do. That's their responsibility. But it doesn't necessarily mean the prosecution doesn't have a leg to stand on and argue about, well, if we're going to talk about DNA and we're going to talk about blood, well, then fine. Then he has to explain why his DNA is on the knife sheath that is found underneath, the victim, one of the victims. And so, excuse me, I apologize. And so I went back to the affidavit tonight or earlier today and read through it again. And because I wanted to see, the defense is arguing that, well, hey, they purposely left out, this other blood that was found. It is not uncommon when you're only trying to establish probable cause, and the judge reiterated that in the hearing. He said, well, that's probable cause beyond 2 Sundays. And the defense was like, well, yeah, but not in this case. It's like, well, it is in every case. Just because you say it isn't doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so I think she's got a real problem there in terms of arguing. Okay. And so what we look at here is who was on scene the day of, and they have in here the Idaho State Police Forensics Team. They were on scene, were preparing to process the scene when he went upstairs, and Officer Smith and I entered the King Road residence through the bottom floor door on the north side of the building. Officer Smith and I then walked upstairs to the second floor, and Officer Smith directed me down the hallway to the west bedroom on the second floor, which I later learned through Xana's driver's license and other personal belongings found in the room was Dana Cornodal, hereafter Cornodal room. Now, if we talk about blood on a hand railing, then there's only a couple of possibilities, right? From the first floor up to the second floor, and of course, the second floor to the third floor. We don't know which hand railing she is referring to. So that leaves, a question mark. Is it from the first floor to the second floor hand railing? And if so, that would mean that the suspect left potentially through that way, which would conflict with DM in her statement, because she says, remember, she looks out 3 separate times and sees the suspect walking towards her with the mask and the bushy eyebrows and goes out the door. And they have evidence of that because there's a footprint in the house that is consistent with her statement. And so in here also was a male, later identified as Ethan Chapin. Deceased wounds later determined to be sharp force injuries. Okay. And then I followed Officer Smith upstairs to the third floor of the residence. The third floor consisted of 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The bedroom on the west side of the floor later determined to be Kaylee. I later learned from review of Officer Noon's body camera there was a dog in the room when Moscow police officers initially responded. So there was a dog, and that's going to be probably the best witness in this case. Because remember, there's dog hair over at Bryan Kohberger's house. Okay, let's not forget that piece. I'm going to try to find that. I had it over here, I think. Hang on, let me find it. Maybe it's here. Yeah, possible hairs. This is what they took out of his one possible animal hair. Right there. One possible animal hair. So they've got hair, possible. But on this one, item number 7, it says one possible animal hair. So that could be unbelievable evidence. I've always said dogs are the most important witnesses in any homicide. So in this case, the detective looks at the first responding officer's body camera and he says there was a dog in the room when Moscow police officers initially responded. Now, what does that mean, right? Because there's a gap of time. And then people showed up before the police got there. Was the dog in a bathroom? Was the dog roaming around? What was going on there at that time when other people got there on the scene? Okay. Yeah, poodles don't shed. I get that piece of the puzzle, but that doesn't mean they can't leave hair. Okay, JD, but I hear where you're coming from without a doubt. Okay, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's not a possibility. Okay. But I hear where you're coming from without a question. Okay. And then he follows up to the 3rd floor and consists of 2 bedrooms, or excuse me, like I mentioned, second, the dog belonged to Kaylee and her boyfriend and her ex-boyfriend, Jack Decor. Now, why this is important is because this is information later found out. Okay. And it's really irrelevant, but the detective felt like he needed to, put that piece of the puzzle in there. But it just goes to show you don't necessarily have to put everything into the affidavit. What you're trying to establish, is there enough probable cause? And if there is probable cause, then the judge will issue a warrant. And that's all this affidavit is. It's nothing more and nothing less. You don't have to put an entire investigation into this, the entire verbiage of every moment, every second of everything that you did. If that was the case, he would have been writing for a month. And so this is just to go before a judge. And I think this is what, this Judge Hippler is looking at. And he's going, well, yeah, but counselor, i.e. Ann Taylor, that the officer doesn't have to put everything in here. All he's trying to do is establish if there's enough evidence here to go get him. That's it. And that's where I think he's leaning towards when he made, a couple of comments the other day. He says, look, this is just a probable cause affidavit. And if the officer left out, the state left out that there's 2 other blood spots over there, well, ask the prosecution. And Thompson came out and said, hey, we didn't have enough to test it. There's not enough there to keep going. All right. However, this is a problem right here. As I entered this bedroom, and this is page 2 out of 18, I could see 2 females on a single bed in the room. Both Kaylee and Maddie were deceased with visible stab wounds. I also noticed he didn't put their positioning. How are they positioned? Because that's not necessary right now. The photographs, the videotapes, the autopsy reports, all of that will explain what's going on. Here, he just needed to put in there were 2 victims, they were both females, and they were both in a single bed. Okay. Both were deceased with visible stab wounds. That's it. Less is more. You don't have to clog up the thought process for the judge. Make it simple. In fact, they used to say, KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid. KISS. And that's a true statement. Okay. I also later noticed what appeared to be a tan leather knife. Notice he didn't say, I first noticed it. So maybe as they were processing, somebody points it out and says, hey, look over here, because they couldn't see it maybe until they started moving, the victims after photography and measurements and that kind of stuff. We don't know. But here he says, I didn't notice it right away. He says, I later noticed it. What appeared to be a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to Mogan's right side when viewed from the door. So as he's looking around, he's looking in, and we call that, a threshold observation, meaning you're standing at the threshold and you're looking into the room and you're absorbing that room, as we learned, what that verbiage was from Vernon recently. I didn't even know there was a terminology called, crime scene absorption. And I've been doing this a long time. So we still continue to learn. I had a different idea, but he had a terminology for it, which, by the way, if you haven't noticed, the sign back there says, "We work for God." Vernon sent me the sign. It's by my guitar. I got it up on the wall. Very honored. Very honored. We're going to have him back too one day, not long. So anyway, the sheath was later processed. Again, this goes to time frames, right? It doesn't have to be that moment. He's not describing the exact moment. He's putting into this affidavit pieces of the puzzle, bits and pieces of the puzzle. And the defense would have you believe that, no, it's not there, so therefore it didn't happen that moment. Well, yeah, it could have. It very well could have. Very well could have. The sheath was later processed and had K-Bar USMC and the United States Marine Corps Eagle, Globe, and Anchor insignia stamped on the outside of it. See, I don't think he even knew that at the moment. It was collected because he said it was later processed, and then he describes it. The Idaho State Lab later located a single source of male DNA. Now, this is different than blood. This is identifiable. Let's go to the next planet type of evidence. And here it says, he says in this affidavit, the Idaho State Lab later located a single source of male DNA suspect profile left on the button snap of the knife sheath. Now, if we look through, where is he talking? Okay. He's talking about the button right here on this example, on the snap, and it's a single source male DNA. Okay. And look, he says it, and then he moves on to the next piece. As part of the investigation, numerous interviews were conducted by Moscow police. Now, Ann Taylor's making a big deal about, well, yeah, but you didn't talk about the blood on the handrail, and you didn't talk about blood on the glove outside. Well, the judge is going to probably weigh into that and probably go, well, it wasn't necessary. And that's what he already did. He kind of hinted to her was, well, this is a lot of probable cause just on this. Meaning, how are you going to get out of the thought or the fact that your client's blood, or your client's DNA is on this snap? And I think, that, you guys tell me that's a pretty high bar to overcome. And then you take this evidence into consideration about the Amazon. What are the odds of the Amazon, number lining up with the very type of knife sheath that they discover in the crime scene. What are the odds of that? And if we say, well, he was framed. Okay, well, how? How was he framed? Meaning, if there's two people involved in this, well, why didn't one guy take the third floor and the second? I mean, we can hypothesize for 100 years. Why didn't one guy take the third floor while the second guy killed everybody on the second floor? If there's two people, why both go up to the third floor and then both come down to the second floor and kill? And then, okay, we can now say, if we go down that rabbit hole, we can say, okay, well, who's got Bryan's DNA? Okay, you've got it. Okay, good. We got it on the sheath. Yeah, great, perfect. Let's go put it up underneath Maddie's body, or let's plant it there while we're having an argument, a fight, and we kill her, this innocent girl. Kill them both, and let's plant Bryan's DNA. Let's put it there. Oh, and by the way, let's leave some blood on the hand railing, and let's leave blood on a glove outside so that the cops get all three. Okay. And, what are the odds that when they throw a search warrant on Amazon, that they get that number back? Hey, these are the items that were, potentially purchased. And it just so happens to be, a K-bar United States Marine Corps knife. I don't know. That seems like a real high bar to overcome, you would think. But that's the job of a jury. Okay. As part of the investigation, numerous interviews were conducted by Moscow Police Department, Idaho State Police, detectives, and FBI agents. Two of the interviews included BF and DM. Both BF and DM were inside the King Road residence at the time of the homicides and were roommates to the victim's. BF bedroom was located on the east side of the first floor of the King Road residence. And they just go through who was doing what, right, that evening, where the victims were seen. The DoorDash, and now we get down to, DM, right? I mean, this poor girl has been just hammered on social media. DM stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom. That means she went into her bedroom to go to bed. The way I'm reading this. On the south side of the second floor. DM stated she was awoken, so that means she was sleeping. And something woke her up at approximately 4 a.m. by what she stated sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms, which were located on the third floor. A short time later, DM said she heard who she thought was Kaylee say something to the effect of, "There's someone here." A review, now again, this is what she thought she heard, and she thought it was Kaylee playing with her dog. This is, she's not seeing it, she's hearing it. Okay. So again, eyewitness testimony. Sometimes it's right on target, sometimes it's not. But in this case, she doesn't see anything yet. She's only hearing it. So it's audio, up here. And then the detective adds in here a review of records obtained from a forensics download of Cornoodle's phone showed this could have been Cornoodle, as her cellular phone indicated she was likely awake and using the TikTok app at approximately 4:12 a.m. So the detective comes to a conclusion potentially that, okay, if Dylan is hearing somebody, she's not seeing it. Could it have been Santa? Because her phone is showing that at 4:12 in the morning, she's awake, it appears, looking at TikTok. So the phone is being utilized by one of the victims at 4:12 in the morning. That's what the forensics evidence is showing. The digital forensics evidence is showing. So he's saying, well, maybe DM could be wrong about it being Kaylee. And the investigation is showing that it could have been Xana, that she's hearing this information or this, there's someone here. Okay. So that doesn't make her sketchy. It makes her normal because she's being woke up from a sleep and she's hearing all this noise and she's thinking, why are they playing with the dog? And well, I guess I don't know what she was thinking, but that's what's being projected here. Why are they playing with the dog at 4 a.m? But, whatever. And then she hears, there's someone here. So she looks out of her bedroom, but did not see anything when she heard the comment about someone being in the house. DM stated she opened her door a second time. So that means she opens it once, looks out to see now. She thought she heard something, and now so she's going to go, investigate it. It must have been enough for her to open the door. She looks out, closes it. Something kicks in where DM stated she opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying coming from Xana's room. She opens it a second time because she hears the crying, what she thinks is crying, and thinks to herself, where's that coming from? Is that Xana? DM then said she heard a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay. I'm going to help you." Now, here's a question. In this affidavit, we will find out in trial, is it Ethan talking? Because she says she hears what sounds like a male voice, or is it Kohberger talking? We don't know. We do not know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows until it's presented in court and the evidence, presents itself. Not what the defense attorney says right now, not even what the prosecution says right now. Until this witness is on the stand and this witness is asked the question, did you hear a male voice? Yes, I did. And if so, what did you hear? I heard a male voice. It sounded like, "It's okay. I'm going to help you." All right. Well, let me play what you told the investigators when you first spoke to them. Click. Does that refresh your memory? Yes. Is it consistent with your testimony? Yes. Let's move on. And that's what they're going to do. And then we have at approximately 4:17. Now remember, up here at 4:12, there's evidence that Xana was on the TikTok, app. And then 5 minutes later, at 4:17, so between 4:12 and 4:17, There's a security camera located at 1112 King Road. A residence immediately to the northwest of 1122 pick up a distorted sound of what sounded like voices or a whimper, followed by a loud thud. A dog can also be heard barking numerous times, starting at 417. The security camera is less than 50 feet from the west wall of Cornoodle's bedroom. So in sequence, in the trial, we'll see the prosecution say, okay, and you heard a voice, a male voice, yes. And what was that voice? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm here to help you. All right, well, Your Honor, may we play the sound from 1112? Exhibit, People's number 7, whatever. Yeah. Press play. Boom. Thump. Whatever that evidence is going to be, it's going to be powerful evidence. Because in that neighborhood, I've been in that neighborhood, and you can hear a pin drop. And if they have evidence like this, which this detective is saying they have, and none of us have heard it yet, that's going to be very powerful, because it's going to show an anomaly taking place inside of that residence. So then she opens the door. That means she closes the door a second time, but then she opens it a third time. But when does she open it on the third time? She heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask. Now, here's what's interesting about that. She heard the crying. Guess what, folks? Somebody's still alive. Somebody is still alive when she sees a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. She hears one of her friends probably dying. Now, I don't know about you, but that's scary as all heck. Especially as a young, 20-something. And this individual she describes as being 5'10", male, not being very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. The male walked past DM, and she stood in a frozen shock phase. Now, I don't know what shock phase means. I think he probably could have, created the same dramatic effect by just saying, and she stood in her doorway frozen. And we don't know if she's talked to doctors, therapists, and has been processing, what she's hearing, what's going on. But we definitely know she's hearing crying as the suspect's coming towards her. Now imagine this idea of saying, is it a dream? Am I dreaming? Is this reality? At the time, what's going on here? Had she been drinking? I don't know that. I don't have that answer. Is there a lot, there's a lot going on here. However, we definitely know the male walked towards the backsliding door, and she locked herself in her room after seeing the male. So think about the sequence. She hears her friend crying, or what she believes to be her friend crying, and she's looking out the door and she's seeing this strange figure coming at her wearing a ski mask. And she gets so scared that she closes her door And what does she do? She locks it. As the male walked towards the sliding glass door, DM locked herself in her room. After seeing the male, she's in shock. She's in fear. This is fear. And let me tell you something. Fear is a crazy emotion. I've seen police officers in officer-involved shootings who won't pull the trigger when a suspect could have taken their life just like that because they froze. Everything slows down. Tunnel vision starts to happen. Your blood pressure, your everything around you just slows down. Everything goes into slow motion. I was involved in a shooting many years ago in 1988 where a guy, I sent IRC in on this guy, and long story short, the suspect was shooting at me, and I hit the deck, and by the time I got to him into the store, okay, everything had slowed down. It was a total, and by the way, he died. Okay. It was a total of 11 seconds, this entire event. And it felt like eternity as it was going on because of, and we were trained, right, to handle that fear. We were trained, how to breathe, how to slow down, how to see things. Okay. But when you're in it, okay, it can be pretty hairy. Okay, meaning scary. I can only imagine a college student being at her house with her friends, having, coming back from a good night out, partying or whatever. And all of a sudden she's hearing crying. She's hearing, all this weirdness go on, enough to the point where she goes to investigate it 3 separate times. What is going on out there? She was sleeping. I'm awake. What? 1, nothing. More, 2, crying. I'm here to help you. 3, sees this guy coming at her. Holy cow, who's that? Click, click. Locks herself into the room. This leads investigators to believe that the murderer left the scene. Now, what the detective is not putting in here is her emotional state other than the shock phase. What does that mean? Are there different phases that they were picking up on during this interview? Was she, is there a dream phase where she thought she was dreaming? Is there a frightened phase where, she paralyzes herself with fear and she's not able to adapt because she doesn't have the coping mechanism? I mean, there's a lot going on here. The combination of DM statements to law enforcement, and notice this is plural, so there's more than one. The combination of DM statements to law enforcement, reviews of forensic downloads, these are multiples, of records, multiples from BF and DM's phones. So that means they got the phones and they downloaded everything from Celebrite. And video of a suspect video. Now that's interesting. So do one of these people or does somebody have a video of the suspect leaving? It says here on DM's phone, and video of a suspect video as described below leads investigators to believe the homicides occurred 4 a.m. to 4:25 a.m. So are these the videos that we're talking about? Ring cameras Are we talking about, the cameras on the houses? Is there somebody there, a citizen, who hears something and starts videotaping that we don't even know about yet? But here he clearly says, and video of a suspect video. What is that? As described below, leads investigators to believe the homicides occurred between 4 and 4:25. During the processing of the crime scene, investigators found a latent shoe print. This was located during the second processing of the crime scene by SP Forensics Team by first using a presumptive blood test, which is probably, luminol and or blue star, and then aminial black, which is basically luminol, a protein stain that detects the presence of cellular material. And by the way, orange soda will also glow. Okay, anything will glow with a protein in it. So you wear these glasses and you use what they call an ALS, which is an alternate light source, and everybody sits there with these glasses, and they in the room, and stuff starts glowing. Is this where they find the blood on the railing? Because obviously they found it. They turned it over to the defense because the defense is telling everybody about it. Again, just outside the door of they detected a shoe print showing a diamond-shaped pattern similar to the pattern of a Van shoes, Van type shoe sole. They didn't say it was a Van shoe. They said it was similar to the pattern of a Vans type shoe sole. Okay. Just outside of DM's bedroom, located on the second floor. This is consistent with DM's statement regarding the suspect's path of travel. Okay. Then the video, canvassing, they go out, etc. And this is where they find, the suspect vehicle number 1. And of course, they now go back through and they start breaking down, the cell tower information, etc. All right. And they've got the expert, Cy's going to come in from the defense side and say, hey, by the way, remember he testified early on in that hearing and said, well, I'm going to reserve the right. Okay. Because he didn't have all the information. I'll bet you he's going to be pretty interesting to hear during the trial. In fact, I'm going to go $1,000 on red that he's going to say, yeah, I can't eliminate that. Meaning when the prosecution pressures him and says, well, isn't it true it could be him? He's not going to be able to say, no, it's not him. Because now he has all the information. Excuse me. Okay. Now, if we fast forward and we get into this idea of, the glove, going back to the glove for a moment. Okay. Is this, the glove that I saw? I don't know. Again, I have no idea if this is the glove that Ann Taylor's talking about. Okay. I find it interesting that there was a glove outside. So Bill Thompson said back in August of 2023 that those DNA samples were not uploaded to CODIS, the FBI's national DNA database, because they were not eligible based on the criteria. It was not publicly known until January in a closed court hearing that at least 2 of the unknown male DNA samples came from blood. And the type of the third male DNA sample remains unclear. We don't know if the source. We don't know if the source has since been identified. We don't know that. at this point. There's going to be hearings on it, but I think the way the judge is leaning based on the evidence, from him kind of leaking it out there, he says, look, this probable cause affidavit, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. And I think he's going to let it in. I could be wrong, but the way I'm hearing it, it sounds like he could be leaning that way. He says, because Ann Taylor now argues that police did not disclose the unidentified blood DNA samples to a magistrate judge in December of 2022 when they sought a warrant for Kohberger's arrest. Well, they didn't have to. They didn't have to. They were looking for, probable cause to make the arrest. If they were looking for two other guys at the same time, then each one of those, if they had a DNA match, they would have put that in a separate arrest warrant affidavit for probable cause. And if there was a third guy, which, she's going to argue, then they would have done the exact same for that. So they would have had 3 affidavits for 3 separate people. And if the DNA matched these other 2 people, then their DNA match would appropriately be put in their affidavit for arrest. So that's what the judge was saying. Well, look, there's probable cause here, 2 Sundays and probably another Super Bowl. So what's your point, counselor? That's what he was arguing, or that's what he was saying to her in a roundabout way. And she kept arguing, well, but not in this case. Well, okay, in what case then? If you're going to say there's other people involved, fine, say there's other people involved. But this affidavit belongs to your client. That's great. Maybe the police, maybe they're still working those other 2 guys. I'm being facetious, but that's what really could be argued here. I've heard all kinds of stuff from, the internet about, this is a cartel hit and, all this other stuff. Okay. Trust me, this isn't a cartel hit. Trust me. Okay. I've worked, cartels, working down in Southern California on the border. I've actually had murders that I've worked that were actually, Mexican mafia or the cartels, the Sinaloa brothers. I mean, all kinds of stuff. Back in the day, even the cocaine cowboys. And this is not a cartel hit. I'm sorry. Could one of the other kids in there have been, slinging dope or selling dope? Sure. Okay. But selling dope is not the death penalty. Okay. That's not the death penalty. These other 4 in there, the cartel would have left nobody alive in that room. Nobody in that house. Not one person would have been left alive. Okay? Not one. And then you could have said, yeah, it's a cartel hit. But not when you leave 2 witnesses, in the house, and then this idea of, well, yeah, but they knew who the cartel was. Well, you try going against, these hardcore cartel people. They're shooting at the Border Patrol. That should be a call coming in. Okay, they don't care. If you get in their way, they will kill you, and they won't leave any witnesses. It'll never happen. So I think we need to, for some folks, just to, kind of relax a little, because you're going to be surprised, unfortunately, when it does go to trial, that there's a lot of stuff that's going to be pointing towards, the evidence that they've already exposed. It says Ann Taylor now argues the police did not disclose the unidentified blood DNA samples to a magistrate judge in December 22 when they sought the warrant for Kohberger's arrest. She claims, since detectives admitted this information to the judge for the warrants, that some of the evidence should be disqualified. No, it's not going to happen. Ada County Judge Hippler pushed back he's not buying it. Judge Hippler said, how does that, even if disclosed, preclude a finding of probable cause when there's a DNA match between the DNA on the sheath and Mr. Kohberger? The judge is saying exactly what I'm saying. If there's two other unidentified male, then what the prosecution has to say in an in-camera hearing with the judge and Ann Taylor is, we're looking for more people. But guess what? Your guy is in that room. Unless he can explain, would you like to explain it to us, Miss Taylor? Why your defendant, why your client, his DNA is in the room? Because I remember when you go into a bank with 3 people and only one of them leaves DNA and the other 2 get away, doesn't mean there weren't 3, but we got 1. And that's what the judge is saying. That's exactly what the judge is saying. So he said, and he goes, remember, he asked Taylor, isn't that probable cause every day and twice on Sunday? This judge isn't going to put up with it. Not like the other guy. Not like Judge, who allowed the house to get torn down. I keep going back to that, right, guys? I mean, we have to remember that the scales of justice are here for these 4. Okay. Cartels don't go around universities in the United States and whack 4 people to send a message to some small town drug dealer somewhere. No. Now, if they ripped off $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, you may get a phone call. Okay. And then some folks show up. But they don't go around killing like this in a house like this. It just doesn't happen. It's fantasy. Folks have watched too many movies. These kids, nobody. My theory has always been that all 5 of these girls were at risk. If BK is your guy, which the DNA evidence is saying that it could be, if he's our guy, I think all 5 of these girls were at risk. It's just my personal opinion. Okay. I really do believe that all 5 of them were at risk, and he started upstairs. This is why we're here. We're not here for Bryan Kohberger. I am, in terms of he's innocent till proven guilty, but that's up to a jury. But there was probable cause to arrest him. And that, remember, touch DNA, not DNA from blood, was found on the knife sheath, found in Maddie's bed after the killing, and it matched Bryan Kohberger. Judge Hippler has said that is enough probable cause. He's already said that. Okay. And that's, that's just reality. People don't like the fact that Bryan's DNA is in that room. Okay. Well, I get it. I get that, but then give me a thought process that says, how did it get there? I mean, how's he going to argue that that the knife sheath that he just happens to have a similar order for on Amazon, what's the quinkydink there? The fact that, everybody argues, well, the car, they got the car wrong. Okay. Is it a Hyundai? Yeah. Is it a white one? Yeah. Okay. Well, is he driving it? Yeah. Okay. And what about his phone, right? Well, it pinged all over the place, like, 12 separate times. Okay. Well, he was just out driving, looking at the stars or the stars and all this other stuff, right? Okay. Now that O.J. Simpson's dead, does anybody believe that O.J. Simpson did not kill Nicole? Honestly? I mean, if you do, good luck. Good luck with that. I don't buy it, personally. Okay. I don't buy that, there's a quinkydink here. Okay. I don't buy the fact that, and by the way, everybody also forgets that there's dog hair and there appears to be blood in his house. Okay. In his bedroom. And remember when they took the TV? They took the flat screen TV. Why'd they take his TV? Is that because the prosecution had a intrusion expert come in, Extreme Networks, and look for Kaylee's information in Wi-Fi capture? And just so happens that Bryan is an expert. His undergraduate work is IT. Remember, he wanted to train the cops. He wanted to train the police. He went to the police department in Moscow, applied for a job to train them on how to catch individuals who were using internet technology. And he felt that he was better than everybody else, including the CAS team, the cellular analysis team, who, by the way, did the analysis on his phone and the evidence there at that time. I think the mistake that everybody's going to look at one day is this mistake right here, meaning the house. The house, when they said, we're taking down the house, that will be the mistake. That will be the mistake. When everybody's going to look back and the defense is going to argue, yeah, but there was blood on a handrail, and they have photographs of it, but the jury is not going to be able to see it. That will be the mistake, in my opinion. And I hope it is not a big mistake where the jury sits back and says, oh man, I'd love to have, one day have gone over there, but I do believe they're going to have a problem with it. I really do. Thank you, Frenchies. Thank you, Sharon. And thank you, Laura, for doing that. You're so kind. Thank you, Magnolia. All right, I believe there were 3 assailants. This is a drug cartel related to Omerta. There's videos with separate ex-cons walking around. Yeah, I've seen all of that stuff. And again, first of all, if it was a cartel hit, you wouldn't see those guys, number one. So I respectfully disagree, but that's okay. You can keep talking about it, and you guys can keep coming over here and telling me to go over and watch his stuff. I don't have to watch his stuff. The reason being is I was there myself, and this is my case log. Okay. These are actual murders that I've worked. All of these are murders. These are real victims. Okay. Have them show me the receipts. Then I'll listen. Then I'll listen. Keep it simple. Exactly. Keep it simple. Cartels. I won't be surprised if Ann Taylor is talking to that guy. I have no idea, but I always find it interesting. That muddy the water and forget the fact that these kids, because I'll call them kids because they are stuck at 20 years old and 21 years old. Think about that. Forever. Honestly, do you think a cartel's going to come in and wipe these kids out? Guess what? Why'd they leave the two? Don't disrespect the family like that. It's outrageous that you do that people do that. These kids went to bed. They didn't get a chance to wake up. And it wasn't because it was a short dope deal that had gone sideways. You know, let's remember that. It's ridiculous. It really is that people would even think like that. Because what you're doing is you're disrespecting her. You're disrespecting every one of these kids by saying stupid stuff like that. Even the defense hasn't come out and said it's a cartel hit. So what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Is it because you want to just cause more pain to the family? Do you get off on that? Do people actually get off on that? I hope you're better than that as a human being. I really do. I hope somewhere in your heart you will find it and that your heart will be softened. Because when the parents have to watch this kind of stuff and listen to it, and then, you know, people are saying, well, they're involved and they're selling and they're doing this. Okay. Really? Really? Is that what you want to tell Ethan's mother? Is that what you want to tell Miss Anna's mother? I've worked transgender deaths. I've worked cartel hits, Mexican Mafia, M.A. hits, El Serrano. I've actually worked these cases, these types of cases. Okay? And guess what? The victims all have family, mothers, fathers, grandparents, brothers, sisters. Believe it or not, Bryan Kohberger has family. His family didn't ask for this. Mom, dad, sisters. They're all victims. But more importantly, the 4 that were slaughtered inside of that house. Don't disrespect what took place here. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That said, let me get Bud. Okay, just a minute, Bud. Come here. All right. He was sleeping on the floor. Sorry, Bud. I didn't mean to wake you up. But, all right, tell him. This is not a cartel hit. Knock it off. Don't be disrespectful. Such a good dog. All right, you guys. We love you all. Continue to stay the course. And I'll see you Sunday. I got a great program lined up for Sunday. Aloha. Take care.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, yeah. Make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I'll say we fly away. You and me go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.